Hello, and welcome to another fully live news episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have my friend Kilian here to help us go over the hacker news. Kilian, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Great to be back again. Hope everyone's doing well out there.
Yeah, and of course we have plenty to talk about today. You're even sending me news like halfway through this week because of so many things happening. And yeah, there's a lot to go through. And I want to also give a shout out to everybody in the chat who, look, I invited you on screen. So This is, I think, maybe the fourth stream that I've been in charge of doing. I am now trying to run the production and everything while Michael is off to other things at the moment. We'll see what happens with that. But for now, I am, running the gauntlet of all sorts of different production problems, making swaps at the last minute. And now, based on how good Jared Alger's Simply Cyber kind of like overview of news went out yesterday, I kind of wanted to invite the community on the stream. Just please be appropriate, or I'll have to take it down. But yeah, so good to see everybody in the comments. Make it hacking. Hey, good to see you too. I need to go. You're just reminding me I need to go to a security conference and see some more hackers. Also, as always, James and everybody else I recognize on the stream. So shall we go ahead and get started? Anything top of mind for you, Kilian, this week?
Oh, no, it's been a weird week. Kody, it's one of those where I feel like I've been going every different direction, but I look back, it's Friday afternoon here, and it's like, what was it that I did this week?
Oh man, so this is something I haven't actually looked up, and I'm not prepared for it all. But a lot of people are telling me that ChatGPT was credited as a writer on South Park this week. So a lot of people in the mainstream are maybe just finding out about ChatGPT if they're not involved in the tech space, or if they haven't really had much opportunity to play with it yet. So you can expect a lot of people doing a lot of weird stuff with ChatGPT now that it's been responsible for writing now on a pretty big platform like South Park. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also one thing to mention is some people in the comments are mentioning that Make It Hacken has a great tool for finding the Flipper Zero. I myself used it to get 2 of them for testing and to have other people on my team get to play with them. So if you are looking for a really good Flipper tool, Flipper locating tool, then the Flipper Locator, aptly named, is a great project for that. So thank you for making that, Make It Hacken. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with some of the news. In fact, I think I wanted to start with the one that you sent me, Kilian.
Cool.
So if I put this one up, this is kind of the story of how it's becoming increasingly difficult to get hackers to go through the correct, proper channels to disclose some of these vulnerabilities with cars. If you are a security researcher, you might have noticed that there's a kind of a surprising amount of 0 days or things that aren't even 0 days. They're just active exploits that are dropping for vehicles. We saw it at DEF CON where people use a Flipper Zero to be able to unlock a Honda. And obviously that's pretty alarming. What the heck is behind this? Why are there suddenly all these seemingly very severe vulnerabilities coming out that still work when we start talking about them? That's pretty unusual for security, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but if you think about it this way, auto manufacturers are auto manufacturers, right? They build cars, it's a physical system. But anymore, they're basically, with all the integrated tech and everything, that they're, rolling computers. And they probably have very smart people there, but they're not primarily software developers. And part of the issue, I think, too, is, and the article kind of outlined this, is that they're not paying the bug bounties that they really need to be for white hats to, responsibly disclose and earn money from doing the right thing, which is frustrating, right?
Yeah, no, it makes it so that there is this market, this gray market for active vulnerabilities where, let's say I'm a young researcher, but I'm poor. I've got a lot of college loans to pay off, and I'm great at computer science and radio stuff, and I got myself a Flipper, and I found a way that I can use this device that anybody can get their hands on to effectively boost cars.
Right.
I've now created a universal car booster, and that's a little bit of a problem, because if I'm going to get rewarded by the vehicle manufacturer, I'm going to become a security researcher. I'm going to stay legit. I have every incentive to do the right thing. But if the auto manufacturer is not going to pay out, what exactly is my incentive to not turn around and just sell this on Tor, on some Tor website and make a bunch of money doing so? So that's kind of what alarms me here is, if you look at the ratio of like what telecom companies are paying. These companies are paying like 10%, or the auto companies are paying like 10% of
Mm-hmm.
the telecom companies are paying. And telecom companies are dealing with a lot of data. They're dealing with phones.
Right.
A lot of times they're dealing with account access. That's obviously a big deal. But vehicles carry people from place to place. Like right now, a lot of these things are focused on theft. But in the future, they could become very, very serious, like ransomware situations where safety could be impacted
Mm-hmm.
by like disabling the brakes on a certain
Right.
model of car remotely if somebody refuses to pay a ransom.
Or, putting on my tinfoil hat, with the remote start apps and things like that, it's all cellular connected. Could you imagine a ransomware where your car won't start until you pay them the money? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, especially in areas that might be experiencing natural disasters or
mm-hmm.
evacuations, like this could be something that requires immediate action and, like really could incentivize the victims to have to pay. So for attackers, that is kind of a perfect storm. And just looking at some of the stories here, there was one story in this article of how someone, yes, a hacking hobbyist in Sarasota, Florida, breached Toyota's management web portal, got read and write access to 14,000 corporate email accounts, associated
Mm-hmm.
confidential documents, projects, supplier rankings, comments, and other information. Told Toyota they closed it, and then they gave him like a warm handshake. Um, Obviously that information would have been a gold mine to a
Mm-hmm.
number of different criminal organizations. So the fact that they're not really prioritizing making the easiest way to get
Mm-hmm.
paid for a vulnerability to go through the manufacturer, that is a huge problem. Because if you think about it
Yeah.
from the security researcher's perspective or the hacker's perspective, like it makes a gray market like the one that we saw cropping up around like illegal access of like iPhones. It
Mm-hmm.
makes that sort of gray market inevitable, in my opinion, for
Right.
people who either want to steal cars or want to do larger style attacks against these companies that manufacture these cars.
Absolutely. And it's, both direct and indirect. Of course, the worst case scenario was something direct against the vehicle, as you mentioned. But even in this case, there's a lot of money on the line. There's a lot of intellectual property and research that goes into developing a car. It's, billions of dollars potentially to develop it. Like, I think GM's program for what the C8 Corvette, the mid-engine, was, I think, billions to do the research. And if like something goes wrong and that research gets out there, you could put the company, virtually in, maybe not under, but you can really put a dent in it.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
mean,
kind of crazy.
getting access to those corporate email accounts, like you spend that much money to develop something, and then like you give a rogue actor access to the
Mm-hmm.
communication systems everybody's using to talk about it. Like
mm-hmm.
that is in my opinion, like that is maybe a little bit of an oversight in a security posture if
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about something that's so important and so secret, but not rewarding the people that are
Right.
finding things that could impact that. So some of this is vehicle safety, and this is like end user stuff, like, oh my gosh,
Yep.
my car's brake stopped using, or oh, my car won't start, but I have to evacuate because of a
Right.
forest fire. That is a big deal. But also the companies behind this have their own incentives to take this more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are we talking about? What's even come out, like, this and early and late last year? Well, we had one vulnerability whereby just getting the VIN on the car, which
Mm-hmm.
you can do by looking in the dashboard or just
Yeah.
like through the window, you would be able to remotely unlock it and start it because
Mm-hmm.
of an authentication flaw. There was another one where just getting the owner's email address was enough to sign up and remotely access the vehicle because it didn't do proper input sanitation, and there was no way of it validating the email account. So you could
Right.
make some random email account on some random domain that didn't exist and log into somebody else's similar account that it would kind of parse in a bad way. So there were a lot
Mm-hmm.
of vulnerabilities here that were pretty dead simple for people who know about web application hacking to get
Yeah.
into. So if this doesn't require like some sort of auto specialist, it's really just bad like back-end
Right.
IoT stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what we're talking about here. And so many
Yeah.
people are into hacking that stuff nowadays that if you put connected stuff online and make it vulnerable, this is what's going to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
interesting talking point, because hey, how many people have a car or ride in one on a daily basis,
Yeah.
especially like in the
Exactly.
United States or in cities like Los Angeles where I used to live? It's like, if all the cars in Los Angeles that were vulnerable to this bug, and it was like 4 or 5 big manufacturers suddenly
Mm-hmm.
failed to start one day, that would completely disrupt daily life, like on a
Yeah.
massive scale. So like this is important stuff.
Oh yeah.
All right. So moving on to the next story. This is one that I don't have a. I guess I have to accept these cookies. This is one I don't have a lot to say about because details are still emerging. But in Russia, a bunch of TV stations started putting out warnings that people should start taking anti-radiation pills and start rushing to bomb shelters. So this was particularly in areas around Moscow. I don't know how to pronounce this, but in that region. But a lot of people were seeing things like this displayed on their screen. There's a couple examples that people took of like some of the very like frightening messages that were going out. But this is obviously like psychological warfare. Like this is like an attempt to use access to media companies, private media companies that display information to tons of people to create panic and fear. So these sorts of broadcasts, oh, it looks like it went over radio too, are can be parts of like sophisticated psychological operations that really leverage vulnerabilities in these, again, public company or these like private companies that are servicing tons of people that have the ability to display seemingly important and official messages. So obviously a terrifying thing to be watching TV and then being told that you need to like rush to a bomb shelter because like all of Russia is slowly turning red. It's unclear what that means, but there was a lot of menacing information kind of being displayed here. And I imagine if that were to happen in the United States, it would cause a huge panic the way it did in Hawaii when somebody accidentally sent out that nuclear strike alert.
That's terrifying. Just the thought of it. And I don't know, I don't, aside from kind of the information here, like Kody, do you even know where a bomb shelter would be? Like where you are? Yeah, that's what I mean.
I would have to dig a hole. I have no idea.
You know what's funny? And this is a completely sidetrack story. I do know where one bomb shelter is. In a school that's, I don't know, probably about an hour away. I know there was a bomb shelter because I've been down there for it's a long story, but so I have an hour drive, but I know there was a bomb shelter, or at least there was like 25, 30 years ago.
I could probably more easily find a nuclear silo where I live than a bomb shelter. So, I'm just going to hope that I'm out far enough in the sticks that no one cares.
It's true.
All right. So next up, we have Biden Cash. So what is Biden Cash? Is it a new program to get cash into the hands of lots of needy people? Sort of. One could describe it that way. This instead is actually, I would describe it as a marketing event by a carding website. So for anybody who's monitoring threats of fraud or maybe worrying about, credit card fraud of their own, periodically, some of these carding websites will do effectively marketing events where they release tons and tons of credit cards that are actually active and valid for financial fraud. So a lot of the time these are just passed around so much that they're not the newest thing anymore and they don't care, so they put it out. But as at the moment, it was a huge amount of it was, I think 2 million plus unique pieces of financial information that were released. So what is this? It contains personally identifiable information like names, emails, phone numbers, home addresses, payment card details, and CVV codes, with the card's expiration dates going out as far as 52. So who do we have to thank for this? It is not Joe Biden. It is just the Biden Cash carding website. So this is not the first time that they do this. Again, this is like a business strategy for this like niche, like cyber criminal enterprise. But you can see that of the records, a substantial amount of them are in the United States. We also have Mexico, China, United Kingdom, Canada, India, Italy, South Africa, Australia, and Brazil. Kind of an indication of where the breaches that fed these may have come from. Although, it seems like this is kind of a compilation of a lot of different things that have been floating around for a while. So this carding shop has been active since February 28th, 2022. Again, like the interfighting and the like marketing and whatever else that these criminal factions like have to do in order to stay relevant in their specific niche is kind of fascinating to see. But the fact that there's like 2 million people who are now at elevated risk of phishing attacks or financial fraud is definitely something worth noting. So if you see an uptick in financial fraud that could be related to this being leaked basically for free now to anybody who wants it.
The funny thing, just I'll point out too, when we talked about it on last week's stream, is like the little statement that they put out, like, oh, thank you so much for supporting our business, and we're here to serve you and we're your valued customers. I find that just kind of interesting in the approach, and I wonder if they're sitting down and writing it, or if they wrote like got ChatGPT to write it for us or for them, like
or if they have like a marketing team.
They've hired, they're so lucrative at this credit card theft ring that they have a marketing team now.
Well, I hope they get nice benefits. I hope they get dental. All right. So next up, speaking of criminal factions, Netwire. So this is something that has been, how can I describe this? This has been marketed
Mhm.
on the ClearNet as legitimate software for quite some time now. Like this is something that actually like was marketed as a way that you could remotely administer multiple computers,
Mm.
and it certainly works for that. I will say that. Unfortunately, this was also picked up as kind of a very popular tool for people who wanted to infect a bunch of computers and then drop further malware on it.
Mhm.
So the infrastructure was seized by police, and it seems like this was both located in California and then also in Croatia, and was operating from the website. What was it? Worldwiredlabs.com. So the subscription was like $10 a month too. For if you wanted to go with one of these like grayware businesses where it's like kind of unclear whether
Mhm.
this was like strictly criminal or if just a lot of criminals were using it. Obviously, these people were doing nothing to stop that, and they were benefiting off
Sure.
of a lot of criminal activity, and that's why this was taken down.
It's interesting to see that there continues to be more and more bleed over between legitimate security or remote access tools and kind of criminals using it specifically for the reason because it is at least somewhat legitimate. So it's not going to get flagged necessarily by your traditional security controls and stuff like that because there is some case for legitimate use. We see it with a lot of kind of tools out there anymore. Even like ransomware gangs using like off-the-shelf encryption methods and things like that to do it, or data erasers, or even uh, repurposing these security research tools as offensive like cyber criminal tools.
So one of our people in the chat asked, did they at least get some free credit monitoring? So it is my opinion that every citizen of the United States at this point is entitled to free credit monitoring. I cannot believe that they are not at this point, based on
Mhm.
the number of breaches I've seen, especially with like the credit monitoring companies themselves being breached. So yeah, I think we're gonna be passing out some free credit monitoring today, everyone. Oh, and then I also have another question about a tweet that I made recently. The question is, what is the Tomo Coco? Oh, sorry, there you go. What is the, yeah, there it is. So earlier this week, I went ahead and posted a piece of just like completely computer designed like art where I gave it a description of my product, the USB nugget, and then I asked it to recreate it based on that description. And what it did was this, if I can get it to come up here, kind of terrifying. Not totally sure what it is or what it's supposed to do, but this is the Tomo Coco. It kind of made the text here look as though it was like a captcha, so it's like kind of hard to read. But yeah, this is nothing. To be clear, it's nothing. It is AI generated and it serves no function, but it looks kind of alluring. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy that AI generated product, I guess. It just looks like a Tamagotchi, and it looks like the AI tried to write Tamagotchi but then couldn't and gave up and just wrote Tomo Coco. So debuting on the stream, the Tomo Coco.
Yeah, I was gonna say it reminds me, just thinking, like picturing in my mind, it thinks of like a little cute Japanese mascot for something, like
it,
a little cocoa bean or something. I don't know.
it came out so cute. I actually kind of like it. I'm pleased by it.
I didn't see it come up on here, on at least on my side of the stream, so maybe not
Oh,
everybody saw it.
yeah, I am still yeah, the stream confirms that we did not see any images, but I will pull that up before the end of the stream. It is very cute if useless. All right, so on to the next news story. We have a play to earn game, which itself is, in my opinion, enough of a scam. Why are you laying additional scams on top of your
Mhm.
already perfectly scammy scams? So in this case, like there's a lot of like pay to play, like or pay
Mhm.
to play to earn games where you're supposed to play the game a lot and then you get rewarded for it. While other people might be able to just pay to get the same status, like two
Right.
different streams of income, like cool. Well, there's a new layer to this now where basically they will execute these advanced social engineering schemes, well, where they will target people relentlessly over like Discord or like other social media channels and convince them that they're making all this money by playing this game, where you have to
Mhm.
make an initial investment and then like you pay a little bit of fees in order to get your stuff out, but you earn like a ton of cryptocurrency just by farming like imaginary plants or whatever. Does that
Mhm.
sound too good to be true? Yes, of course it does, because I'm not stupid. But not saying that people are, but some people may have unfortunately fallen for this, and we're like, I will work the virtual fields. I'm sure
Mhm.
that my virtual crops will feed plenty, and that is why I'm being paid. So lo and behold, these victims were convinced that they just needed to invest some of their hard-earned cryptocurrency into a small investment in this game, and they would be able to harvest their virtual crops and earn an infinite amount of money. When the time came for them to cash out, unfortunately, there were some fines and fees incorporated that they had to pay
Mhm.
in order to get stuff out. So when they were ready to recover their investment, they had to pay even more, and then there were more fees until they were finally like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm not paying any more fees." I'm like, "Okay, well, we're keeping everything."
Right.
So their initial investment got taken, all of their time was completely wasted, and then all these fines and fees that they paid, thinking they were going to get like 10 times as much money back, were also adding on to the pot. So they got hit like 3 times. One of them was
Yeah.
purely a waste of time, which I think is especially mean. But in this
Mhm.
case, the attacks continue against America's most vulnerable community, gamers. It's sad to see you guys get hit again. I know that you are in the front of the news week after week, but as America's most discriminated against, I'm sorry, I can't. But yeah, no, gamers again getting hit by
Mhm.
too good to be true. It kind of seems like this is like an intersection between like gamers and crypto people
Yeah.
that are the exact target of this particular attack. So rude, obviously, but as I said, a very vulnerable community here
Mhm.
of crypto people and gamers being preyed upon. How to defend against these scams? Stay vigilant. Um, and also, if it seems too good to be true, it is. That is
Mhm.
literally the advice by like the FBI. Aside from like, don't don't do it. Use a unique wallet. Use a third-party blockchain explorer to check the balances, and then periodically use the third-party token checker to help you see which sites or apps you have inadvertently permitted to access funds in your wallet and revoke those
Mhm.
permissions. So if you allow this game to access your wallet, it could potentially drain all of the cryptocurrency in your wallet. So let's say you're playing this game and it says, oh, you need to connect your wallet in order to like cash out. If you give
Right.
this app permission to access the funds in your wallet, even if it promises not to, it can still take everything.
Right.
So just be very aware of that. Very spooky.
Yeah, there are a couple comments here just that I saw. Crypto's such an alluring thing for people, and James mentioned it. Like it can target people who are, maybe looking to get ahead, and it's so alluring. It's a get rich quick scheme, and it's it's kind of disgusting. Like, I won't talk about the merits of crypto on its own. But feel like the audience probably has various opinions on it, but it is a way that people have taken advantage of, maybe investing or getting in early. And it's just sad that again, people are scamming, again, out of time and money. Like you said, it's just mean. So be careful.
Okay, I'm trying again. Hello, everyone. This is the Tomo Coco. There we go. And you can see on the bottom, we've got the kind of like CAPTCHA style name on it. Again, it just looks like kind of like a Tamagotchi style kind of guy with like a technical sheet that goes along with it that doesn't seem relevant to it in any way. But yeah, so when somebody was asking, what is the Tomo Coco? This is just a generated DALL-E description of the device that I create, the USB nugget when fed and then regurgitated back. So I thought it was kind of cute, actually. Of all the horrific things that it created, this was one of the least horrifying. So yes, that is the Tomo Coco. No, it's not a real product. But if you guys want me to make it, I will. Just let me know. We can do a Kickstarter. You can have a Tomo Coco if you really want to. I'll make it. It looks cute. All right, so this is just, we won't spend too much time on this, but a record-breaking 900 gigabytes per second denial of service attack in Asia was mitigated in kind of an interesting way. Kilian, how do you pronounce this company name?
Akamai? That's how I
Yeah,
pronounce it.
cool. Thank you so much for doing that for me. Yeah, Akamai. So they mitigated a really interesting denial of service attack, and they did it through kind of spreading it out throughout their network and then filtering it and then allowing the traffic back to their customer. I've kind of been curious about the way that some of these denial of service attacks that are, again, like giant botnets that are
Mhm.
using all sorts of like reflection techniques and other things to like generate huge amounts of traffic, all going back to a single target in an attempt to take them down. In this case, the attack peaked in like 1 minute. So it kind of seemed like an attempt to see whether or not they could overwhelm their defenses. And they were using a scrubbing technique that took the software and broke it out across their entire worldwide network, and then started scrubbing information to see whether or not it was like automated traffic or legitimate traffic, in an attempt to like basically scale infinitely to handle this problem. So what was interesting is that it seems as though all of their network infrastructure was loaded, meaning that like they had to get their whole infrastructure involved in order to handle this attack. Let's see, but it apparently never surpassed 15% of the total traffic. So if an attacker was like kind of testing to see like how far they could get with this attack, like, well, they got their answer. About 15% of the total capacity of the security company was eaten up by this attack, even though it only lasted for a minute. It never actually disrupted the services for legitimate users. But again, this was really interesting because we're able to see how modern companies are able to mitigate this sort of thing, and what like a massive punch actually takes out of their available security. It's like shields in Star Trek. It kind of feels like at a certain point. All right, so on to the next piece of news. This is the ransomware gang that has stolen data from the city of Oakland. So we've talked about this a couple times, and at this point, it looks like the data has begun to be leaked. So the initial leak was 10 gigabytes of a multi-part RAR archive. It has lots of unfortunately juicy information about employees. So this is information like passports, IDs, and other like kind of like biometric like information that could have sensitive details in it. Passports in particular have a lot of information about the person, and are a very unfortunate thing to be leaked here. So City of Oakland says private and personal confidential information, financial information, IDs, passports, in full employee information, human rights violation information is now partially published in a compressed 10 gigabytes file. So that was the criminals on their leak site. So in the statement posted yesterday, the city says that they're monitoring the situation, that our third party has acquired certain files from a network and intends to release them publicly. That certainly seems to be the case. That's a good observation. If we determine that any individual's personal information is involved, we will notify them. So basically they're saying they're going to go through the data dumps and then try to notify people that are impacted as soon as possible. Obviously, this is pretty predictable. The city is not going to pay the ransomware actors. The ransomware actors are using the double exploitation business model, where not only did they lock up the files, they also exfiltrated them. And being that they're incredibly sensitive to employees, that's obviously very demoralizing to be working for a company that feels like it's not doing much to stop the hackers from, like releasing your personal information. But then the company is caught up in the problem where if they pay the hackers, they're actively encouraging those hackers to continue doing this to other companies. So it really is a sticky situation here.
Yeah, that's why, we say it all the time. You can't unbreach data. Once it's out there, it's out there. Because you're right. There's not a heck of a lot you can do. Especially with stuff like this, like credit monitoring gets you only so far. Like you can change your credit card number, but you can't change your social security number. You can't change the information on, like if there's a human rights violation. I don't know what's included in that, but that makes me worried. Like that seems bad, like real bad.
Is that part of the file big? I would hope that part of the file would be like less than like a gigabyte, unless it's like a video or something. But yikes, it's a little scary. Wow. Still, the chat is still very interested in the Tomo Coco. Multiple people saying they would be interested. What my only question: what does it do? Can somebody explain to me what the Tomo Coco does? And then I will make it. All right. So next up we have. Let's see. Where are we? Here we go. AT&T alerting 9 million customers of a data breach. So this data breach is not as bad as some of the ones that we have seen recently with telecommunications companies. However, it is definitely not great. So the bottom line here is that this is, they went out of their way to confirm what this does not contain: credit card information, social security information, account passwords, or sensitive personal information. By one standard, one might say. However, the breach apparently contains information that would be reasonably necessary to conduct a SIM swapping attack. So it looks like they had a small percentage of impacted customers had exposure of rate plan name, past due amount, monthly payment amount, various monthly charges, Oh, here we go. First names, wireless account numbers, wireless phone numbers, and email addresses. That sucks. So if you have a private phone number that nobody knows about, well, guess what? Now somebody knows about it if the account is under your name. So hackers would theoretically be able to look up that personal phone number, attempt a SIM swapping attack, and if you use that personal phone number for SMS verification of any of your accounts, you are now a short step away from potentially having somebody be able to SIM swap you, as that number is no longer private. Now, should you rely on, a phone number being private as a security mechanism? Probably not. Like, no, that's not a great practice. But a lot of people, myself included, count on being discreet as at least one way of ensuring that it's a little bit more difficult for people to try to get in there and reset my passwords. So this is obviously not great for people who know about this sort of SIM swapping attack and don't have any other method of securing their accounts. So with all these other sorts of data breaches, possibly exposing passwords, having your email address and your phone number exposed as well allows attackers to tie all that information together into a plan of action, which is obviously bad news.
Oh man, this week's a real bummer, isn't it?
It's job
every week
security.
though, isn't
what am
it?
I going to say? Hey, I've got a bright spot though. So GitHub is now making 2FA mandatory. So I think that we're probably going to have a lot less of these stories in the future talking about how there was some sort of terrible breach against like a little known like library that's included in 100,000 different projects. So at least at this point, there will be no excuse for people whose passwords are breached. If you phish a GitHub developer, that should not be enough to log into their account and potentially affect everybody who relies on the project that they maintain. Honestly, kind of scary and dumb that we currently rely on projects that might be secured with just a password that could easily be lost or shared or otherwise stolen. So yes, I am fully in support of this, but what's going to happen? What is the actual process going to look like? Well, if you're a GitHub developer, you're going to get 45 days as a reminder saying, hey, you need to figure this out or you're going to lose access to core stuff. Then you're going to get a deadline and it's going to prompt you to enable 2FA once a day, every single time you access GitHub. Then after 7 days of these reminders, you're just going to be straight up blocked from accessing certain GitHub features until you enable 2FA. So you probably won't be able to maintain your projects properly on GitHub if you don't update. That is pretty forceful. But hey, this has become such a big problem that I see where they're going with this. Frankly, it means that we probably won't see as many of these stories where there are supply chain attacks against some sleepy developer who just doesn't feel like turning 2FA on and ends up affecting a lot of people who depend on their project.
Yeah, this is, net good. I appreciate that. Again, like you said, it's a little bit forceful, but sometimes you have to be. You have to give a little shove sometimes and move people in the right direction. It's hard. We don't want to. 2FA is a pain. I get it. But I'm glad they're doing it. This is a nice bright spot.
Yeah, definitely. So somebody in the chat says, where is Miki? I'm assuming you mean Michael. Michael's currently testing for his drone pilot's license, and I believe he's considering going around the state, convincing people to get various cyber solutions. So he's hunting the Squatch at the moment, and also trying to find a way to aerially hunt for the Squatch. So that is why I have been doing a lot of the production stuff. He is off to other cyber and apparently flying things. So wish him luck on his part whatever test today, because that is what I understand he is doing. I thought drones didn't have pilots. Yeah, I know, right? Like they should just fly themselves. All right, so next up we have an FBI investigating a breach that is impacting the U.S. House of Representatives, members, staff, and their families. So what happened here? So this breach was involving the health organization, a DC Health Link, that administers the healthcare plans of U.S. House members, their staff, and families. They were notified today in an email from the director that they were notified of a significant data breach yesterday, exposing the personal identifying information of thousands of enrollees. Your data may have been compromised. They don't know the size and scope of the breach, but they've been informed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is where the story gets a little weird and funny. So the stolen data is already up for sale online. There's no question that this happened because you can go purchase this data on the darknet right now. What is interesting to me is it seems as though somebody has already purchased this information. So it looks like we have another anime avatar. Of course, that is not a good sign. If your data is being offered online for sale by somebody with an anime avatar, then you are in trouble. What's interesting is that they are only accepting XMR because that is apparently difficult to trace. And it's also, the threat actor is also claiming that they've sold it to at least one buyer. Who could that possibly be? I wonder. Who would be interested in buying this? Update on the statement. Adam Hudson, the public information officer for the Health Benefit Exchange Authority, confirmed that some of the stolen DC healthcare link data was exposed online and that notifications would be sent to officials. And that, where is it? Oh yeah, sorry. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Minari stated in a statement that the DC Benefit Exchange Authority said FBI had purchased some of the stolen information put online. So I guess we relatively promptly solved the mystery of who bought the data that was offered online for sale today. It was the feds. It was the federal government bought it. So interesting.
Here's the upshot to this. Like, here's what makes this hopeful. I mean, we've seen government data breaches before, but this is the U.S. House. So part of our, for I guess people outside of the U.S., part of our lawmaking body in the United States. I hope that this is enough. This kind of puts the fear in them a little bit, and at a very personal level, to maybe address a United States national type of data protection law. Like we've seen it in various states. So California has it, New York has it. It's a mix. A lot of the states individually have it, but I would love for them to come up with like a US, GDPR or something like that. Maybe this is the thing that kind of unsticks some of the US politics that we have here and gets them to all cooperate for the greater good. I'm hopeful. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I hope so.
Liam just says, imagine if the feds got scammed. I mean, that would be additionally funny. It's already like kind of ironic that they're like helping to justify the efforts of this threat actor by like paying them like almost immediately. Like maybe they're really super good at tracing the money. Who knows? I whatever. It's all crypto to me. But yeah, a very interesting thing that that the feds immediately purchased it as soon as it came online. You'll have at least one guaranteed buyer, maybe two if you consider the private sector of people who will like buy the data, then turn around and sell it as a product to somebody else and then claim that it was stolen from dark web criminals when in fact like you just paid them.
Right.
All right, so next up, more bad news. So Acer is confirming 160 gigabyte data breach, and this appears to be some pretty sensitive information about their technical stuff. So this is not employee information for once. Kind of feels like the first time this whole stream that this is not employee details.
Yeah.
It is instead technical manuals, software tools, backend infrastructure details, product model documentation for phones, tablets, laptops, BIOS images, ROM files, ISO files, and replacement digital product keys. I don't know what that is, but it sounds bad. So the threat actors also shared screenshots of the technical schematics, and this would be a huge windfall for anybody looking to further exploit the company or their products. Having access to internal tools and technology makes it that much easier to test and automate testing for all sorts of flaws. So this is a huge windfall for any attacker who would be wanting to go after this company, and a very unfortunate breach when it comes to intellectual property.
Yeah, the scary thing I think maybe for me is, I don't know if I'm not sure what's included in this, but think about attackers trying to maintain persistence, like through reboots and things like that. If you have some of the technical background, maybe some of the internal documents about their BIOS, creating your own custom BIOS, and it's not unprecedented. This happened before, but it'll live through reboots, always give you your access back. So that's the scary part. I mean, there's some work to get it installed, but that's what worries me about this one. Yeah,
and in a I guess like on the bright side kind of statement, they say they recently detected an incident of unauthorized access to one of our document servers for repair technicians. So it looks like this was specifically something that was set up for repair technicians to access. While our investigation is ongoing, there's currently no indication that any customer data was stored on that server. So this seems to be like technician level like data that's been accessed, and it may not be like research data or anything that's like super secret. If it was being relayed to like field technicians or third parties. It's kind of a little bit unclear here how sensitive that information was,
Yeah.
but still overall not a great breach. I mean, but what is, All right, so we've got Fortinet warning of a new critical unauthenticated RCE vulnerability. So this means that there could be arbitrary code or denial of service attacks on the graphic user interface of vulnerable devices. Now, Fortinet is generally used to stand up like business networks, right? So the mitigations here are mostly like just saying you need to limit who can access these administrative portals, because this is a incredibly severe vulnerability, and it needs to be mitigated very quickly. Not a lot to say here other than that this is just notable because these administrative interfaces are very commonly seen across lots of different products, and they tend to be exposed in many places. So if these interfaces themselves have a vulnerability, then limiting access to them is really the only thing you can do. And I cannot tell you how many times these networks will allow guests and other unauthenticated users access to these login portals when there really is no reason for them to even be able to see it. So yes, definitely something where users of Fortinet devices using these operating systems, should definitely update their stuff, because this is a 9.3 out of 10, which is, critical, very bad. Go ahead and fix that now if you have one.
Yeah. Here, the other thing I'll say here too is it's at least something to bring up, and not specific to this, but these type of attacks, ones that attack like the infrastructure components, your gateways, your reverse proxies, your firewall, stuff like that. When a lot of people think of traditional security control, they think, oh, I have my endpoint covered. I have like stuff on my servers. I don't have to worry about that. But this is another way that the attacker can gain that foothold initially to use it as like a staging point to launch. And then you're not like, you don't have antivirus on there. You don't have endpoint controls on your network device. So the attacker can get in a way that you could potentially be blind to if you're not looking in the right spots, or, as we always say, looking at the data, because they're eventually going to do something with it. And that's usually attack the data.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. I've got also, this is one where I've been hearing about this from people that live in the Minneapolis school district area, just talking on Twitter about how bad this is. So have you heard anything about this attack? Because it's been going on for a while now.
Just sort of the headlines on it. I haven't dug into too much of the research aside from like I read this article obviously beforehand, but just up to the lead up of reading this, just that kind of it's been ongoing really.
Yeah, so it's been kind of a slow trickle of information that's been coming out about exactly what happened here, but it seems that the Medusa ransomware gang, which is apparently notable and different from the Medusa Locker ransomware, has deleted a bunch of data, and then is also has ransomware a bunch of data, effectively rendering it deleted to the school, and also is threatening to release it. The release date for this is March 17th, 2023, and it is a lot of data. This also has to do with a lot of the student data. And one thing that's notable here is they posted a 51-minute long video going through the data and showing all the access that they have. This is pretty unusual, frankly, for a group like this to provide that much evidence, or just provide a video that's that long, demonstrating all their file access. Again, just not something that we really generally see. But Minnesota Public Schools has decided that they are not going to pay this. They declared it to be an encryption event, which has been the subject of much memeing on security researcher and hacker Twitter. Encryption event is probably my favorite new term for having a ransomware attack. But yeah, no, an unscheduled encryption event unfortunately occurred, which led to some system outages since February 21st, 2023. And apparently this school district serves over 36,000 students and administrators. So this is a lot of information. And again, this breach just continues to get worse every time we check in on it. So by the 17th, I guess we'll see whether or not this data was leaked online. But the decision to not pay here, while arguably a good one, is definitely going to cause pain for the people who are involved in this breach.
I love that encryption event. I laughed out loud when I read it. That's the most corporate-y, they hired a PR person to write that. Like, how do we say that this is terrible and the world's on fire, but in like the nicest way? Oh, we've had an encryption event. Like, this should be a stand-up bit, honestly. Like I can picture like George Carlin in my head going through this, an encryption event, Like, somebody out there, knows
when
this.
I have to break the news to them softly, it's like, there was just a little encryption event. I'm sure, it'll pass like the weather. All right. So speaking of things that that will pass, DuckDuckGo has announced an AI-powered search query answering tool. Is it ChatGPT powered? No, it literally just searches Wikipedia and Encyclopedia Britannica. So it seems like it would be pretty easy to trick it into saying things that are not true. But it seems like a kind of basic AI assisted tool. Again, kind of interesting in the AI wars that are showing kind of a rush to get these products which just answer you instead of sending you a bunch of links. Like, that is the trend for search now. So seeing DuckDuckGo enter the fray is interesting. But yeah, for now, it only wants to pull from a couple of sources that could not possibly be I don't know, corrupted with false information. Like Wikipedia, for example.
I mean, listen, probably everybody here, school papers and everything else has been written off of Wikipedia. So, it's fine. Everything is fine.
Oh my God. All right. So, hey, Emote, right?
Oh yeah. These guys are back again. They were huge. What, a couple years ago, like 3-4 years ago, they were everywhere.
Yeah, no, and this was one of the biggest malware networks that was ever created. It was just really, really good at spreading itself, maintaining its infrastructure, and it had a very successful strategy for existing. Yeah. Recently, it's been shut down. People weren't really sure what was going on, but it appears to have been restarted. And while it is operating at a low level, it is quietly building its network and appears to be kind of getting itself set up for a more extensive attack once it parses through all these new address books that it has access to in order to start sending spam emails. So one of the things that Emote does is it uses all of its infrastructure to try to infect new devices by going through all the address books it has access to and sending out spam according to a number of different templates that will infect other devices. So one of these is called the Red Dawn template, which is apparently what is currently being used. And what's interesting is it is using a 500 megabyte file to try to get around virus scanning. So what is this technique? How does it work? And how are attackers using it to get around virus scanning? Kilian, have you encountered this before?
Yeah, this is pretty common. This is not like a new technique. It's been around for a while, but basically, like, you can only most of the time read up so much into memory, and if you put enough like junk data in there, just over bloat the file, it'll have trouble reassembling it if as you kind of go through the scanner in just the most simplistic terms, or it could force it to consume like just a ton of resources, and for performance considerations it might abort out before it finishes. So it's not unusual. It's not even particularly new.
Yeah, I mean, there are other techniques like zipping a file a bunch of times that will also confuse antivirus scanners, but this technique is relatively successful. Those 500 megabyte files are padded with junk or unused data, makes them look bigger, makes them harder to scan, and they look something like this. So when you try to open it, it says the document's protected. It tries to lure you into clicking on enable content, hoping you don't read any further information here. And if you do, then it will infect you. It goes through the process of pulling information from WordPress blogs that have been infected, and then loads itself, it saves itself to a randomly named folder. It then goes ahead and also uses the padded 526 megabytes to prevent virus scanners from being able to detect them. What was interesting is Bleeping Computer went and uploaded one of these, and they were only able to be detected by 1 out of 64 engines. So that means that this sort of evasion technique, while kind of stupid, actually really does work. Like, it's pretty successful here. So then malware runs in the background, awaiting commands, and will probably install other payloads on the device as operated. So this is pretty interesting because Microsoft has made a bunch of changes since this was last active. So this sort of infection was very, very easy to spread because macros would sometimes be enabled by default, or it would allow people to just open this very, very easily. But Microsoft has started locking this down because it was, again, the lifeblood of this huge infection that was continuing to spread via this method. So in July of 2022, Microsoft finally disabled macros by default for things that were downloaded from the internet. So there were so many threat actors who were using this technique that now this is what happens when you try to open it. It says Microsoft has blocked macros from running because the source of this file is untrusted. And you can click on learn more and go through the whole rigmarole to try to open it, but it is hard. It is not user friendly anymore, and is probably no longer the path of least resistance for attackers who want to trick people in this way. So, Will Dorman, it's funny. There's a couple of people on Twitter that I follow that always end up in the news. Yeah, if you're looking for some good analysis on this sort of thing, Will Dorman's a great person to go to. So hi, Will. Yeah, him and Patrick Wardle are just in the news all the time. But yeah, so this is a kind of an interesting analysis of how Emote is still relevant, even though some changes have been made here. And we're seeing kind of a move away from the Word and Excel documents to other file formats like OneNote, ISO, and JS. But we'll also take a look at another one in just a second. I think it's actually the next article, which is talking about some ways hackers are starting to get around this. So Microsoft is now reacting to the pivot that threat actors have had to do because they've locked down these macros, and now they've started blocking untrusted XLL add-ons. So that is an Excel format that basically is kind of similar to macros. It's something that allows you to add additional functionality onto sheets, but it has been weaponized by attackers to make it so that they can do this kind of macro style attack using an Excel spreadsheet instead. So kind of a sneaky pivot here, honestly.
Yeah, it's actually nice. You know, Microsoft for the longest time had offered these extensible capabilities, but the trouble was it was hard to sort of disentangle. You know, there's a lot of use cases for, you know, being able to script and do things in there. But I appreciate that we're sort of moving away from that now, and kind of putting security first. You know, we'll of course adapt, but it's just weird that you'd load, you know, or DLL, or they call it XLL for Excel, but load that in there to be able to run stuff. Like, I get it for plugins and things like that, but you know, that seems like a corner case more than a primary use case. But I don't know, if someone out there is a developer for Excel tools, maybe you can educate me.
Oh, and also we have a guest in the chat. So Simply Cyber has joined us. I was just watching his video yesterday on repeat because unfortunately it was too early for me being out on the West Coast, but lots of great resources there. So if you haven't checked it out, I did a guest appearance on Simply Cyber and it was super fun. I also am signed up for the newsletter. So yeah, definitely check that out. Gerald, good to see you. But yeah, man, I love the audience interaction here. And yeah, a lot of the same people are also mentioned in the news continuously. Patrick Wardle, also a great resource if you're interested in Mac security. He makes a lot of free open source like Mac security tools that allow you to keep an eye on what's going on because Mac OS systems are frequently targeted nowadays, and there aren't a lot of great security tools there. So a lot of cool people in InfoSec that keep cropping up in the news and who are worth checking out. All right, so we're getting pretty close to the end of our stream, but today we're also going to talk about let's see, proof of concept release for critical Microsoft. Honestly, the story bored me, so we're going to skip this one unless you want to talk about it, Kilian. Kind of dry, honestly, for me. Yeah, it was a cool proof of concept, but it requires very exceedingly specific permissions to run, and it's cool, but we're going to go instead to malware infects business routers for data theft and surveillance. They use this picture on Bleeping Computer almost every week, and it freaks me out every time. It gives, I just get like yuck from this. All right. So this is a campaign called Hiatus, which is a little ironic because it might imply that campaign was suspended, but it's going up against Draytech Vigor routers modeling 2960 to 3900, and it steals data and is basically designed to do some pretty sophisticated snooping once it infects a router. Now, these are business class VPN routers that are usually used by small to medium-sized organizations to VPN into corporate networks. And what this does here is use a kind of an unknown attack to initially gain access to these routers. So we don't really know how they're being infected, but once they are, there's a malicious bash script that is deployed in order to install TCP dump, which is a legitimate utility, and then a couple of other things that are perhaps less legitimate. So it goes ahead and kills anything running on port 8816 and then starts the malware running on that port. It connects and finds system data, the MAC address, kernel version, system architecture, firmware version, network information like the router IP address, local IP address, MACs of devices on adjacent LANs, file storage partitions, mount points, directory level path information, and then process data, UIs, UIDs, all that stuff. So it sends a heartbeat post to the C2 every 8 hours to join itself to the C2 server, and then it also is able to do things like configuration, shell, make a remote shell on the infected device, read or delete files, execute scripts, do TCP forwarding, SOCKS 5, so setting up a SOCKS v5 proxy on the breach router, and then also quit if they want to. What's kind of scary here is it's designed to do things like forward any files that are uploaded to that through that router, or forward any email addresses that pass through, or any emails that pass through that router by setting itself up on the TC ports associated with mail servers like and FTP connections. So that means that this is designed to basically be listening on these ports for any sensitive communications this business might be passing through its networking device and pass that on to an attacker, which is pretty sneaky and a good indication of why routers are such tempting targets.
Yeah, if you think about it, just, we think about, and Kody, I know you're a big fan of VPNs, like would be a device-to-device VPN, and you think, oh, it will be, like, the connection will be safe, like, between my remote office and the corporate office. Technically, that's true, but if you compromise the endpoint, you get everything before it gets encrypted and sent down the tunnel, potentially at that point, or if it's running, a proxy there, the attacker could use that to hide, where they're coming from, really, if they want to do some other type of attack, or conceal their location, or make the traffic going somewhere else like it appears from, a legitimate source. So it is super tricky. But yeah, crazy stuff.
Yeah, so this is particularly devastating. Like you really, if you have one of these routers and it's eavesdropping on your entire business, not only is it acting as a potential endpoint, so hackers could be using this to do all sorts of illegal activity, they could also potentially be, like intercepting all your sensitive communications and preparing themselves for some sort of ransomware attack. So nasty attack, very sensitive target, and something that you should definitely keep an eye on. All right, so last up is a little bit of crime and punishment. So this is the Doppelpaymer ransomware gang. We're targeted in a Europol operation. And this was in Germany and Ukraine, which was kind of surprising that the Ukrainian police were able to carry this out, considering what's going on there. But there was a good amount of coordination that allowed them to raid the house of a German national. And they got a list of people who they also believe was involved in this ransomware gang, who they are actively still searching for. They believe that this ransomware gang had ties to Russia, and those suspects that are still wanted are Igor, and Irina, who were responsible for reconnaissance, breaching, and deploying. Let's see, acting as the admin of the malware, and then the initial stage of the attack, sending malicious emails and handling the data leak and chat system, plus publishing the stolen data from the victims. So while some of the ransomware operators have been wrapped up, it looks like there's still some abroad. Another ransomware gang getting wrapped up. Again, a lot of these tend to be either affiliates or other groups that are using software written by other groups, and then just using the methods that are taught to them by those groups to continue the ransomware attacks without actually involving the people who authored the attacks.
Yeah, I see it in the article here, but I was going to say this group was particularly large, like right up in the lead up of the pandemic, and very early on, I remember seeing them all over the place. I'm glad they finally got them, because they dropped off the radar a little bit. I hadn't heard about them in a little while. So it's nice to see. It might have taken a little while, but appreciate that they caught up with them eventually. Because that's the frustrating thing being in security, is like you kind of scream to the void a little bit.
Yeah. And a lot of these gangs are able to operate and make a really good profit, just by using these methods where they're frankly feeling like they're risking very little, because they're using other people's infrastructure, other people's software. It's really just, pay to play for some of these ransomware gangs, where provided they're willing to pay for the initial software, they're able to just follow the instructions and make money. All right, well, that is, I think, about the time that we have this week. I want to thank everybody also that has been in the chat with us. It's been particularly lively. And of course, having Simply Cyber here is always a treat. I encourage everybody to check out his stream as well. He streams more often than I do, although I'm trying. I'm going to get there someday. And frankly, it's very inspiring to have somebody else who's like a one-man team doing both production and content, kind of showing me what's possible out there. So thank you for that. Also, again, thank you to everybody in the chat. It's great to see everybody. Kilian, what do we have going on at Varonis coming up? I know that we have our IR. Let's see, it was their incident response, global threat trends and future of IR coming up. So if you haven't heard of that, it's going to be an event kind of talking about the incident response side of what we've covered today. So we've talked a lot about how like companies get breached and seeing like what that looks like from the attacker side. But if you're curious about what it looks like from the incident response side, these companies scrambling to respond and what that really looks like, is going to be a great presentation. And you can check that out on the Varonis website. Anything else come to mind, Kilian?
No, that's a big one. Should be a great one. We have a great incident response team here. We have awesome threat researchers here. So it's always a treat when we get to hear, some of our experts kind of share their knowledge and what they're seeing. So I look forward to these events a lot. Should be a really good one.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can also check out the Varonis.com website to find more great free resources. They are the sponsor of the stream. So if you like it, make sure to subscribe, comment. If you have any questions about news stories that we've covered, make sure to drop a comment on the YouTube channel, and I will answer it on our Wednesday Q&A stream, where we answer all of your hacker questions and go over some great tools that I have found that week. And also on the Varonis website, there are some great articles I've written about like Wi-Fi hacking and other cool stuff. So you can check that out there. We will see you next time. And have a good one, everyone.
Take care.
I have to end the stream now. Okay, bye.